Thanks for the Brad Yerger, 2318 East Fifth Street, Fremont. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you tonight during open public comment. I just have several thoughts that I'd like to leave with you. Hopefully this will prompt some investigation. I personally would like to know some of the answers to these things, but first and foremost, I'd like to start with the settlement payment that was discussed at the last meeting. I was interested in knowing, we didn't get to speak at that item on the agenda at that time, but I was interested in whether or not the city's $500,000 law firm had been solicited for advice with regards to holding back $2 million of construction payments on the lagoon work, which then turned into a $6.5 million lawsuit and a $3.5 million settlement. My question was the initial advice to withhold payment sustainable in court? Why didn't the city's lawyers anticipate a countersuit? Were there legal grounds to withhold payment so weak that the lawyers advised the city not to go to court and to settle for $1.5 million more than the citizens would have otherwise had to pay if they'd have paid the original bill? We didn't get much discussion on that. I certainly would like to understand that better. Sidewalk construction. Can one expect the city of Fremont to enforce municipal code uniformly? Would John Q. Public elsewhere in the city get the same treatment as the property owners along Jack Sutton Drive? City code allows the city to require construction of sidewalks within 30 days notice by the city, or the city will build and charge the owner construction. Would John Q. Public have the option to debate, protest, stall, and request or ask that they be unannexed? I don't think so. City code voting. My question to the council and to legal is this: if only 5 or 6 of 8 members of a council are present, making a quorum, how many votes does it take to adopt a motion to approve the agenda or a motion to adjourn? Per the city code, does it take 3 when 5 are present, 4 or 5 when 6 are present? Like to have the answer. Why do I ask? Well, the following sections of city code seem to present a quandary. The first section that's relied on often is section 2-105, which says, except for in cases it's 5 votes, affirmative votes constitute a majority to adopt a motion, resolution, and ordinance, and that's been quoted several times. However, if you read on later in code, section 2-308, that specifically discusses motions and resolutions, it says something quite different. It says, unless otherwise provided, the majority votes of council members present shall be required to pass a motion. Guess what? At the last meeting, there was a motion for censure. The vote was 4-1-1. That would seem to be a simple majority under Robert's rules. So why did section 2-105 prevail over section 2-308? I have no clue. Then there's the Brummeyer noise and conduct complaint. Wouldn't it be great if our $500,000 law firm or the city prosecutor would only notify and keep the complaining party updated on the status and pending action of the complaint? Councilman Ellis's departure. Why wasn't Councilman Ellis's retirement after 5 years of dedicated service to the city given the same respect and fanfare that was afforded to departures of Councilman Coons and Gibson? The fact is, this didn't happen, and it was disrespectful at best and certainly shameful at least. For myself and many others in this community, I say well done to Glenn, who served and represented this city effectively, and you should have been recognized for the vision and outstanding leadership you demonstrated to this community. Lastly, in regard to agenda item issues, in recent months, there's been some failures to fully inform the public on agenda items, as well as to stifle the public's comment. Case in point, appointments for police and fire positions list the names of those being appointed, but the appointment to someone to fill a city council seat only appears as a general statement, and then the name is only disclosed in the council packet material. Why is this? The Attorney General has given an opinion that says, with regards to the specificity of the agenda, that agenda items shall be sufficiently descriptive to give the public reasonable notice of the matters to be considered at the meeting, and that requires sufficient enough detail in the agenda so that members of the public are not forced to look past the agenda in order to understand the issue discussed and the action to be taken. If we can put the names down for police officers and fire appointments, I don't understand why the agenda doesn't spell out the name of appointments to city council. Currently, public comment is no longer even allowed on appointments since they've been moved from where they used to be, which was regular agenda, to consent and then to public comment. Has been often attacked as being removed altogether, and now they're in a separate section where we don't get to comment at all. Yes, the code says the mayor shall appoint and the council shall approve. You each have responsibilities. They're 50-50. I would hope that we would follow that. And I would hope that all council members that are going to be seated would actually get their training before they take their oath of office and take their appointed seat. Thank you.
So again, we're in open public comment till 7 o'clock for those that just entered. Please, if you wish to speak, come up to the front and sign in. There's also comment cards in the back.
Steve Ray, 1445 North Irving Street, Fremont. Well, I didn't know Brad was going to say anything about sidewalks, but I did a little looking about the sidewalks out there at Jack Sutton Drive, and you all sit there in June and July's meeting, said it was very important to get these sidewalks done for the safety of the children, which I agree. You've talked about safety down on Morningside Road. Signs haven't been changed there yet, by the way. And I did look up the code for sidewalks and stuff 30 days after they have been told that they need to put sidewalks in. And I realize the city owns, I forget how many feet of that, but I talked to Mr. Zettner about it. He said that's a priority to get that done. Why is it 5 months later and we haven't turned a shovel to dirt? He did say, well, you know, it's a project and we have design. What's the design about a sidewalk? I think that part of the problem is the people that own that land out there is development. They were not really on board to have sidewalks. And I know for a fact in some of this, there's been sidewalks put in this city. The people didn't really want them, but they were told, you got to have a sidewalk. You don't put it in, we're putting it in for you, which I think is what should happen out there. And since it was such a priority with the council to get it done, I believe the council needs to check up on that and make sure that it's getting done. 5 months, it'll be after school now before the sidewalks get in. And we're also worried about the safety, which I agree, it's a problem. But why isn't that a priority for the city to get done now rather than later? I just don't see why it's such a problem to get it done there. It should have been done already. So, thank you.
Okay, the time is 7 o'clock. That concludes public comment. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll go ahead and open up the City Council regular meeting. Time is 7 o'clock. The Opens Meeting Act is posted on the rear wall next to the agendas. This time we'll have a roll call, please.
Please vote for roll call. Six council members are present, Mayor.
Next on the agenda is mayor's comments. I do have a couple items tonight. First, I'd like to recognize our November service awards. We have 2 tonight. Adam Young will celebrate 5 years of service. Adam started with the DU as a utility maintenance worker in 2018. Then he got promoted to utility tree trimmer in 2019. And then Jordan Limmer, 5 years of service. Jordan started with the DU as a utility worker 1 in 2018. He got promoted to utility maintenance worker in 2020. And he also got promoted again in 2022 as a water and sewer service worker. And most recently, has been transferred to the gas system worker 1 position. So you want to thank Adam Young and Jordan Limmer, both 5 years of service with the city of Fremont. I would also like to just mention, we recently had noticed that we received a community development block grant, a downtown revitalization grant of $435,000. This is to help business tenants and or commercial property owners in our downtown area be eligible for facade improvements. And so just really excited about being able to bring those dollars into the community, and want to thank the staff for that and the work being done on our grants. It's really important, especially this one, to continue the downtown revitalization. That concludes my comments, and we'll move on to appointments. Oh, sorry, we'll move on to item 1 on the agenda. It was a motion to adopt the current agenda for the November 28th, 2023 regular meeting. I have a motion on the agenda. Councilman Sukram,
Make the motion.
Councilman Jensen,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Now moving on to appointments is item number 2. Consider appointment of council member to Ward 2. So it is my privilege tonight to be able to present the recommendation of Blair Horner to serve the remainder of council member Ellis's term to the Ward 2 council seat. Last meeting, we did approve the resignation of Mr. Ellis, and that set off a series of events where we had to notice this out to the community, and we accepted applications up until November 21st. We received 3 applications. I interviewed all 3 candidates. I do want to thank all 3 for their willingness to serve the community. It is not easy to put yourself forward and be willing to serve on the city council. I want to thank all 3 for their willingness to do that. Again, I'm very pleased tonight to present Blair. He is a real estate professional here in the community. He has served on multiple boards within the city, including Rebuilding Together, the Fremont Creative Collective, the Fremont Housing Authority. He was also past president of the Fremont Kiwanis Club. So it brings a wide variety of service to the city council and to the constituents in Ward 2. I believe will do a great job representing Ward 2 and again fulfilling the remainder of the term for Mr. Ellis. So I would take any comments or questions from the city council. Councilman Von Baron.
Yeah, nothing in particular. I just appreciate the resumes and of each person applying being included in the packet. Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the city council? If not, I would take a motion of the appointment of Blair Horner to this city council. Councilmember Vaughn.
So move.
Councilwoman Ganem. Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
We will now, our legal counsel will do the oath of office for the newly appointed council member, Blair Horner.
So you can take your seat over here. You have a copy of it? Or do you need it? Please raise your right hand. And would you please read the oath of office?
I, Blair Horner, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Nebraska against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely and without any mental reservation or for purpose of evasion, and that I will faithfully and impartially perform the duties of council member according to the law and to the best of my ability. I do further swear that I do not advocate, nor am I a member of any political party or organization that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or of the state by force or violence, and that during such time as I am in this position, I will not advocate nor become a member of any political party or organization that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or this state by force or violence. So help me God.
Very good. Congratulations, Councilman Horner. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on the agenda to item 3 is a motion to confirm the appointment of Wyatt Kreifels and Miles Morgan as police officers per mayor recommendation. Again, it is my honor tonight to bring forward Wyatt Kreifels and Miles Morgan as new police officers within the city of Fremont. They have completed all requirements, have gone through the civil service process, and again, need to be confirmed to begin their duties as in the police department. I would take any questions from the city council. If there are none, I would take a motion on these appointments. Councilman Jensen,
If there are no questions, I'll move to confirm the appointment and welcome Wyatt and Miles to the police department.
Councilman Sukram,
I will second that.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
We have now Officer Kreifels here with us. Would you please stand and be recognized? All right, we will go ahead and move on to public hearings. Item 4 is a resolution 2023-278 recommending approval of Class C liquor license application of Crystal Hussey doing business as RD's Place, 2215 North Broad Street in Fremont, Nebraska, 68025.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This item was noticed in the Tribune on November 16th for this public hearing. Police Department report is included regarding this item. This is RD's Place is an existing establishment and is currently operating under a temporary license. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have regarding this item.
Any questions from the council on this item? Councilwoman Ganem.
No, just a question on the police report. Was that okay? Because I know it does say it was approved in November, but there's no signatures on anything, and I just wondered.
You know, I would probably attribute that to, the holiday. I did get that from the officer and, that it was, okay to move forward with it. And so I think it's, they provided the information with regards to it for the council to take into consideration. So.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Jensen.
Just a quick question. This is not a new owner, is it? This is a existing owner, has been there for quite a while. RD's has been there forever.
I'm not familiar with the ownership personally. It's not the first time that I'm familiar with that name. I'm not sure if they're going through a restructure, but I did receive this license application from the state, and so they're looking for a recommendation from us regarding the application as it is before you tonight. So I'm not sure what triggered the need for this application exactly, but we did receive it from the state.
Any other questions from the council at this point? Okay, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Any comments from the public on this item? Seeing no comments, I'll close the public hearing. Any additional comments from council? There are none. I'd take a motion. Councilman Jensen,
No additional comment. I'll make the motion to approve the resolution 2023-278.
Councilman Von Baron,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
The motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. All items in the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the city council, will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or a citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda by council or staff? Councilwoman Ganem,
16,
Councilman Von Baron,
7, please.
any items from the public to be removed?
Brad Yerger, 2318 East Fifth Street. If we could remove item 13 for discussion, please.
There's no other items. I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda 5 and 6, 8 through 12, 14 and 15 and 17. Councilman Von Baron,
So moved.
Councilman Sukram,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Item 7 is to receive the October 2023 animal reports.
Good evening, Jody Sanders, City Administrator. We attached a staff report because the report that you see does not contain all the information that you're used to seeing. And the reason for that is after the public comment period, at the last meeting, or perhaps it was a question at the public comment period, but when we received the last group of reports, I know that, sorry, there was some question about kind of how it footed and the number coming forward and all of that. And so we've been in contact with Forever Homes. They're reworking and working backwards and finding out where the mistakes were. And they're still working on reconciling that for us. And so we're working with them on how best to present those changes to you. I would expect to have those in December. But if there were other questions.
Councilman Von Baron,
Now I've started, we have a group that's working informally on the animal ordinance, working on that piece. So I've started paying a little more attention to it. A couple of things. Number one, I understand the difficulty of going back all those months. So it certainly wasn't expected that everything would be caught up at one point. There is still a discrepancy, it appears, of 2 animals on this report. But I appreciate the efforts that have been made. It would be helpful. Do they intend to resume the summary report? That would be a very helpful piece to have.
I would assume that they will, but I will make sure that they do.
Okay,
you.
appreciate that. No more questions. Thank you.
okay. Any other questions or comments from the council? Take a motion to receive the reports. Councilman Jensen,
Motion to receive.
Councilman Sukram,
Okay.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Item 13, resolution 2023-284, authorizing the changed lease rates for hangar lessees who can show payment for a hangar at a different airport during runway reconstruction. We'll have Mr. Zetterman for staff.
Good
report.
evening, Justin Zetterman, Director of Public Works. So as we're all aware, starting likely around March 15th, we'll be shutting down the runway at the airport for something in the range of 4 months. There are current lessees who utilize our airport for their business, and so just leaving that airplane in a hangar is not an option. So they've had to go and look for other places. And there are certainly other people who want to be able to continue to use their airplanes, and that's going to require them to find some place. And so for those people who are actually going to be paying to store their aircrafts in other locations so they can continue to use them, we have decided that, and unless they were leasing it for less than what it is here, but we aren't overpriced in our leases, so that's probably not going to be the case, that we would just waive that lease fee for that amount of time. They're really not using the space. And we want them to come back. So we don't want them to feel like, well, I've got to leave and I don't have a good way back. And then we lose them as a customer moving forward. So through discussions internally, as well as a small group that the advisory committee put together, we decided what would best would be that plan, kind of following what Wahoo did and giving a break to people who won't be using our airport to store their planes or for any function. For those people that are still there, their planes are still protected from the elements. They're still receiving a benefit from having the planes under roof. And so for them, there would not be any discount or change. The other concept we thought about would just be a flat 50% across the board for everybody. But that really didn't help those that were most impacted because of their businesses, while it maybe overly helped people who were still gaining benefits from what they had. So that's kind of how we came to this plan. It was heard at the advisory committee meeting last week. I don't know if I had the number written down there. I believe there were only 7 of 8 people present, so it was approved 7-0 by the advisory committee.
Thank you. Questions for Councilman Jensen has a question?
Yeah, I just asked on particularly the business ones. I'm a little bit familiar with it. So especially the business hangars, there's more than airplanes in there. I mean, if you're going to require them to break their lease, there's going to have to be an awful lot of stuff moved out of those hangars besides airplanes.
There certainly are hangars that have some additional items in it. There are limits within what the FAA allows, but generally, if your aircraft's still usable and you can roll it out and in anytime you want, they're able to do with that. But yeah, certainly there's more than planes. So if somebody wanted to break their lease and get out and go, they might take a moving truck or two at some of those places. Yes.
Councilman Horner.
Oh, yeah, just a quick question. The rents would still be charged for people who are going to use the storage for the period, even though they're not using their airplane, correct?
Yeah, if they're not removing their
Yeah,
airplane.
so if they're leaving their plane in there, they're still going to pay.
Yeah, they're still getting a benefit.
Okay,
We're hopeful that a lot of them will take advantage of the fact the FBO is still open. They all have annual maintenance, and so they can still receive some benefit.
thank you.
Councilwoman Ganem.
One more question. How many leases do we have?
I apologize. I don't have the exact hangar number. We have, I know it's in the range of 30 hangars. There are several hangars that have multiple planes in them by different people, but that's in the neighborhood of where we're at. So.
Thank you.
Comments from the public?
Red Yeager, 2318 East 5th Street. I want to thank Councilman Jensen and excuse me, Councilman Horner for raising a couple of the questions that I wanted to raise as well. And it had to do with whether or not in the airplane hangars, where I'm confident that there, and it's been testified to, I guess, already by Mr. Zetterman, that there are non-aeronautical equipment or personal property stored in these hangars as well as aircraft. And so if you, in fact, are taking your aircraft someplace else, but leaving your other equipment or personal property in these hangars during the 4 months of hiatus, it would seem to me that it would not be appropriate for the city to be waiving storage fees for the use of a hangar for things that are still being stored, even though the airplane is gone. And I had hoped that the council would pursue that further with regards to, if that's occurring, whether or not a full waiver of their airplane storage fees should be reduced for any personal property or non-aeronautical equipment they leave in the hangars during the 4-month period. Knowing myself, since I rent several garages around town, garage rental is not cheap in this town. So if you were to store vehicles, RVs, boats, other kinds of things that might be permitted by the FAA, and I'm not sure just what those things are, but I understand that there are things there, as Mr. Zetterman has indicated that there are, then those kind of things should not be discounted. They should pay for rent, even though their plane is gone, or they should pay for a portion of the rent, even though their plane is gone. It shouldn't be a flat out waiver. I ask you to consider that amongst yourselves before you establish whether or not a full waiver is appropriate. Thank you.
Any additional comments? Okay, comments from council. There are no comments. I'd take a motion. Councilman Jensen.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to approve resolution 2023-284.
Councilman Horner.
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Item 16 is resolution 2023-288 to approve and accept the Debbie Durham Family Foundation grant in the amount of $122,500 for downtown archways. Councilwoman Ganem.
Thank you. I'd really just like to commend the Debbie Durham Foundation for the very generous gift in helping the downtown and certainly leaving a solid memento for downtown. Extraordinary people. She represents people who care about Fremont and willing to do something to help the city and shows the love for our city of Fremont.
Thank you. Any additional comments from council on that? I just also want to personally thank the Debbie Durham Foundation. I think these two archways will be a great addition to downtown, really help define the area and bring that sense of place that we want in the area. So I just want to thank her for her support. Councilwoman Ganem.
If there are no further comments, certainly like to make a motion to approve 2023-288 to approve and accept the Debbie Durham Family Foundation grant.
Councilman Sukram.
I'll second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Moving on to unfinished business, number 18, ordinance 5659 to modify and continue the business improvement district number 1 in the downtown. This would be for second reading. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As I mentioned at the last meeting, we did have one property to add. I have added that with this iteration of the ordinance. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have, but also it would be up to the council whether or not you'd want to amend it during this reading or the next one. If we receive anything from me now and then, we might be able to see if having to do an amendment if we wait until the next meeting. So thank you.
Okay. Are there any comments from the council on this item? We did have a report from the Business Improvement District last meeting, so. Any comments from the public on this? Okay. Seeing none, additional comments from council. So just to be clear, Tyler, we can make a motion to amend either this meeting or next meeting with the property at 304 East Sixth Street, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I would just recommend doing it, I guess, maybe at the next meeting, in case something else comes up, we would be amending it once instead of twice.
Okay, so we can just approve it and then the next meeting we can do the amendment. Okay. So I would just take a motion to have second reading. Councilman Jensen,
I'll make the motion for the second reading of ordinance 5659.
Councilman Sukram,
I'll second that.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Now have second reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska to continue the existence and authority of the Fremont Business Improvement District Number 1, establishing the purpose for such district, providing that real property within the district shall be subject to special assessments, providing and describing the boundaries of the Fremont Business Improvement District Number 1, amending and establishing the proposed method of assessment to be imposed within the district, providing penalties for failure to pay special assessments, repealing ordinances in conflict with this ordinance, providing for severability, and providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect on second reading.
Okay, moving on to new business. Item 19 is ordinance 5662 for approval of utility salary ordinance. This time we'll have staff report.
Good evening, Jennifer McDuffie, Director of Human Resources. This is utility salary ordinance. As a staff report states, we are adding 2 new classifications to the salary ordinance. The jet truck technicians were included in the current budget. And those are positions that we have finalized and are ready to begin filling. And then the gas system supervisor is not an additional headcount. We are just reallocating a current position within the same department to better serve the department and the community. So I am happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Councilwoman Lathrop.
Can you just provide some clarification on the difference between a gas system superintendent and a gas service supervisor?
The gas system superintendent is in charge of, sorry, I use my hands, so is in charge of the entire gas department. The gas service supervisor is in charge of essentially half of the department with the service workers. There's also a gas system supervisor, and that position is in charge of the team that goes out, their system workers. That's the team that goes out and does like the construction, putting in new lines, digging up gas leaks and fixing them, that sort of thing. Whereas the service workers are more doing things like locates, or if we have a report of a gas leak or something like that, that's what that side of the department does. So that's kind of the difference. Is the superintendent is the department head for all intents and purposes, and is in charge of the entire department. Does that make sense?
It does. Before there was just one person doing that whole thing. Is that correct?
There was, the superintendent was supervising the service workers. Yes.
Okay. So now there's going to be 2 different salaries for the one person from before?
Yes, we're having some structure changes, and Jeff, you can hop in if you want to explain a little bit better the specifics.
Yeah, Jeff Shanahan, Utility General Manager. When we had the last superintendent, he came from the service department. He was a service worker. The new superintendent, he wants to look at it from a different perspective. So we're going to have it'd be like a lead service technician. He'll be one of the men on the fleet. And then there's the other supervisor who runs the crews that installs the lines and that kind of thing. And then we can look at the superintendent, or I guess it's called superintendent.
Yes.
Yeah, superintendent. He's looking at the overall operation of the entire gas system, whether it be service, installs, gas supply, peak shaving plant, regulators, those kind of things, looking at it from a big picture. It will not add to the head count in that department at all.
Any other questions on that? Councilman Jensen?
Yeah, that was kind of my question. It's these are budgeted items. This is not going to add, it's not going to change anything with salary. This is all within budget. And the only other question I had was if we wanted to move this along and try to get these done in one reading so you can get these things posted and get them out.
Yeah, that'd be great. As soon as this gets approved, we're going to post for those jet truck jobs that was approved in the budget process earlier this year.
Okay. Comments from the public on this item? Okay, seeing no comments, additional comments from council on this. If there are none, I would take a motion. Councilman Vaughn,
Motion to approve ordinance 5662 for first reading.
Councilman Sukram,
Oh, second.
cast your votes for first reading.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
We'll now introduce and have first reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska pertaining to pay plan for officers and employees, repealing ordinance number 5651 and all other ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for publication in pamphlet form and providing an effective date on first reading.
Councilman Jensen,
Yeah, I'll make the motion to suspend the rules and move ordinance 5662 to third and final reading.
Councilman Von Baron,
I would second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Now, we'll now have final reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska pertaining to pay plan for officers and employees, repealing ordinance number 5651 on all other ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for publication in pamphlet form and providing effective date on final reading.
Cast your final vote.
The ordinance is approved 7-0, Mayor.
Moving on to item 20 is ordinance 5663 for approval of government salary ordinance. We'll have staff report.
Jennifer McDuffie, Director of Human Resources. So again, on the city side, we've been doing some additional looking at the structure. And during the budget process, we did discuss adding a planning assistant position to the planning department. This ordinance would officially add that position to the salary ordinance. In addition, we have been having discussions with Chief Elliott. We know that we're having difficulty staffing the police department. So one option that is available to us is hiring part-time officers. And we've had some interest. So we took a look at the salary ordinance, and the way the salary ordinance is currently structured, it was from prior years when you did not have to have a certified law enforcement officer serve as a reserve officer. Someone that was not certified could serve as a reserve law enforcement officer or a part-time officer. That's no longer the case. The state no longer allows that. So you have to have a certified officer. We're not going to get a certified officer to come work for us, even on a part-time basis, for $15 an hour. So we are proposing to change the salary range for that position for the reserve police officer to match closer to what we pay our full-time officers, what a certified officer is worth, so that then we can hopefully be able to attract more part-time officers that are looking for some additional work. So happy to take any questions.
Councilman Von Baron.
Jennifer, if just from a logistical standpoint, would it be our preference? Would it be easier to bring on more reserve officers than a full-time if we had enough interest in doing that?
I think with reserve officers, most reserve officers, obviously, if they're certified, they're probably working full-time elsewhere. So their availability is going to be limited. They could potentially get up running faster because they are already certified. Whereas when we hire a full-time officer, for example, the two gentlemen that were appointed earlier tonight, They will go to the academy in January. They will be gone for 16 weeks at the academy, and then we have to bring them back for 12 weeks for our field training program. So it's going to be a long time before they are able to be out on the road on their own. Whereas a certified officer would be able to do that faster. Don't know that it's necessarily a long-term or a large solution, but it's something that may help us in the interim.
I would assume the pool available is not that large for reserve officers.
We have not explored it in a while. We haven't used reserve officers and gone looking for reserve officers in a while. I do know there have been a couple that have reached out that are interested, so.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the council at this point? Okay, comments from the public on this item? Seeing no comments, any additional comments from council? If there are none, I would take a motion. Councilman Sukram,
I'll make the motion to hold the first reading of ordinance 5663.
Councilwoman Ganem,
Second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Now introduce and hold first reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska pertaining to pay plan for officers and employees, repealing ordinance number 5658 and all other ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for publication in pamphlet form and providing an effective date on first reading.
Councilman Jensen,
Yeah, I'll make the motion to suspend the rules and move ordinance 5663 to third and final reading.
Councilman Sukram,
I'll second that.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
We'll now have final reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska pertaining to pay plan for officers and employees, repealing ordinance number 5658 and all other ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for publication in pamphlet form and providing an effective date on final reading.
Okay, cast your final vote.
The ordinance is approved 7-0, Mayor.
All right, moving on to item 21 is resolution 2023-289 for the Department of Utilities Property Insurance Renewal Proposal.
Good afternoon, good evening, Jody Sanders, City Administrator. I'm kind of still filling in a little bit for our new Finance Director, Jennifer Knabb, who is out of town this week. So what you have before you is the renewal for the Department of Utilities property insurance, and this alarm covers the alarm coverage handles everything on the city side, but the investment that we have in the utility buildings themselves and the liability related to a power plant, a coal-fired electricity generating plant, and as well as the wastewater treatment plant was basically more than LARM could handle. And that this has been the case for a while. I mean, this is not new. We needed to renew this policy. By the time we were able to get the information to the broker to get the quotes necessary, they sent us the proposal the day after the last council meeting. So that's why we have the situation where we actually needed to get an extension for 3 days to cover us so that the policy terms would not expire and leave us unprotected for that time period. They were able to extend the coverage for us. We used a not to exceed amount simply because the ins and the outs of that short-term coverage period of 3 days versus the entire term, the sum of the two would be something less than the $1,221,000. And I take any questions.
Questions for staff on this item? Okay, seeing none. Any comments from the public on this item? Seeing none, any additional comments from the council? If there are none, I would take a motion. Councilwoman Ganem,
I would move that we approve a resolution of city authorizing the Department of Utilities property insurance renewal proposal for November 27th, not to exceed the 1,221,000 plus taxes. It's resolution number 2023-289.
Councilman Sukram. Okay. Cast your votes on this item.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Item 22 is resolution 2023-290 to affirm emergency declaration by the mayor and the utility general manager for expenses in excess of the spending limit for repairs to the Lundy Wright Unit 7 boiler feed water control valve.
Mayor, City Council, Jeff Shanahan, Utility General Manager. Earlier this year, earlier this month, we took Unit 7 offline for its fall inspections, and once 8 was back online. During the operation of Unit 7, we were having trouble with the feed water control valve that controls the water that goes into the boiler. And at low loads, we weren't able to keep the water under control. So once we had the opportunity to get the unit offline, we sent that valve in for repair or inspection, basically. Once they inspected it, they determined that really it was completely shot. So we looked into getting a new valve, seeing what the timeline would be on that. And we were told it'd be, anywhere between 1 year and 2 years to get it in the queue. We'd have to get it engineered. We'd have to get in their manufacturing schedule, then get it out here, get it calibrated and all set up. We talked to the person that was inspecting it. They came up with a plan where they could basically use the valve body, rebuild it, and then reverse engineer the valve seat stems and cage. But it exceeded our spending limit. The unit is out of service until this valve is in. So, it has to be fixed. So we're asking you to affirm the emergency declaration and allow us to move forward on this valve.
Councilman Horner, do you have a question?
No, that was on from the
Okay. Councilman Vaughn?
Do we plan on ordering this valve with the 2-year lead time to have on the shelf? next
No,
time this
probably
happens, or
not.
Is this a once in every
Yep.
20-year kind of thing?
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the council on this? Okay.
Thank you.
Councilman Jensen.
Well, I just to reiterate what I heard at the UIB meeting earlier this afternoon, this valve would be outlined to say, once with the repairs that are going to be done, this valve would be expected to last at least another 20 years. Would that be correct?
Yeah, that would be the goal. It's, anytime you run the unit at a very water under high pressure cuts. And so, anytime you run on very low loads, you're running that risk. But yeah, we had anticipated this to last for many, many years. It's like a new valve.
Okay. Thank you. Comments from the public on this item? Okay, any additional comments from council on this? There are none. I would take a motion. Councilman Vaughn,
Motion to approve.
Councilman Jensen,
Second.
cast your votes.
The motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Moving on to item 23 is a council member Sukram item ordinance 5664, amending sections 2-207 and 2-505. The Fremont Municipal Code regarding restriction of participation in city authorized Keno lottery operations. Councilmember Sukram, you want to open it up?
Yep. I brought this forward just to kind of clarify the ordinance. In your packet, you've got some of the homework that was done on it. There's really not much to it besides allowing council and mayor and employees to play Keno. So it's pretty straightforward.
Any questions for Councilmember Sukram? Councilman Jensen?
I guess I'd want to thank him for his work. I think with the goings on the last several months, everybody on this council pretty much understands that it is all right for us to play the lottery. And not just here, in many other towns also. I guess My only question is, are we going far enough? I know there are people at Big Red that are prohibited from sitting on council, from doing anything. Why should this follow us even a year after we're off council? Why should some of these people are restricted from us? Now, of course, we're not now, but as far as an employment opportunity is, it still says we're out a year out. I don't know if I'm happy with this the way it is, but I kind of think it could go farther.
Councilman Von Baron.
I've talked with Councilman Zuckerman regarding this one. This is an interesting one because when I first started getting questions about this last spring, I argued Councilman Jensen's position because I couldn't see that any councilman could influence Keno. Obviously, it's a game of chance and the odds are the same. And so I was challenged enough that I just wrote a note and asked for legal clarification. And at that time, we said that council members and spouses are prohibited from playing Keno to avoid receiving anything of value from the city's appointed Keno lottery contractor or any affiliated entity thereof pursuant to the attached city ordinance. And the final sentence was, this is pretty clear and designed to prevent government influenced gambling practices. So we acknowledged as of last May, and as I understand, it's been a fairly long-standing tradition with the past council members. It seems to be a little bit hit and miss, but I talked to several and they were admonished heavily that playing Keno was illegal. And so right after I argued that position that it was not, and started listening to the other arguments, the other question becomes, I think that the key is that last sentence. This is pretty clear and designed to prevent government influence gambling practices. Every one of us sitting here on the council has a role in Keno. We grant licenses, we determine how the funds are spent, and it may not bias us in exactly everything that we do, but it's pretty difficult to stay unbiased with Keno or any other game of chance if you have a stake in the income stream that comes from it, and if you have a stake that where you would literally benefit the people you represent by expanding it. So I think it's pretty easy to argue that we do have a potential conflict of interest in this. I don't have a burning passion to see it outlawed, but I think just in terms of simple integrity, one of the principles I think of being where we are is that it very often isn't what comes up that creates the question. It's just allowing the question. And I think if we expose ourselves in that area, while I think it's probably within our right to say that councilman can play, I think there's a self-policing aspect to this that says because of the nature of our role, the responsibilities that we have and the decisions that we make, we really need to think about this one. And I truly believe that we cannot come into this impartially if we allow ourselves to continue gambling in this manner. Thank you.
Councilman Horner.
In the Councilman Super, and whenever you were looking at this, I noticed that there were quite a few communities. It looks like they don't have any rules whatsoever. Is there any way that I mean, is it, I don't play Keno, so I don't know. So is there any way that game can be influenced by, if I were to go in and play Keno, and can I somehow influence the outcome of that game and increase my chances of winning?
I don't play Keno, but I don't see how we can do it. The gambling now in Nebraska is wide open, right? So I don't know how, I understand what we control with the Keno board and everything else, but I don't know how we can influence a game of chance.
Thank you.
Councilman Vaughn.
Yeah, I'm not sure how this got misconstrued and council members in the past were told something incorrect. When I read the existing laws as they are, it's crystal clear to me the difference between one group and the other group. And so I don't necessarily think that we really need these changes, but I think for clarity's sake that they're worthwhile.
Any other questions for Councilman Sukram? Okay. Comments from the public on this item?
Red, you're 2318 East Fifth Street. I'd like to thank Councilman Sukram for bringing this matter up for discussion. However, I think keynote participation by the mayor, city council members, appointed officers, and hired officials who represent the city should be a concern. It's the city that applies for, renews, owns, and controls the state-granted Keno license. The city council grants Keno operator contracts, and the city administrator and finance director report Keno revenues. The council then approves disbursement of the city's share of Keno revenues via grants to 501c3 applicants. Allowing participation by those in control may not be illegal, although earlier commentary by legal maybe took exception to that, but it does raise the perception and ethical concerns regarding the potential conflicts relating to separation of authority and control as espoused by Councilman Von Baeren. Adhering to the highest standards and limiting the city officials that can play promotes public trust. Thus, I believe that those that are responsible for and are in the control of Keno gaming, revenue reporting, and proceeds distribution within the city should not play. You may disagree, so I ask you this: is the modifications to the Keno ordinance before you, has that been based on advice from our $500,000 law firm again this time? Was it upon the legal firm's advice that the city attorney, the city physician, and all hired officials other than the finance director are apparently not permitted to play Keno? They aren't listed as having the right to play, so apparently they can't play. But what about also the fire and police chief? Can they play? The Nebraska Gaming Rule 600.06E allows cities to add more limitations and be more restrictive. However, the city cannot grant participation rights that would violate section 600.06C. Should a person that is a named city officer or official actually decide to work or perform some sort of duty at the lottery while employed by the city? It's possible. This rule wouldn't accommodate that because city's rules say they could play. So if you want to allow anyone and everyone the right to play Keno, why wouldn't you just reference and follow the guidance found in the Nebraska gaming regulations under 35-600.06? Listing those who can play seems to imply that others that are not listed cannot play. The proposed ordinance language appears to have hidden limitations for some city employees while permitting and not limiting the playing of Keno of some others. As a result, the proposed language is still going to be gray and confusing. Personally, I still think that council members and administration originally implemented Keno in Fremont had it right from the very beginning. The mayor, council members, city administrator, utilities manager, and the finance director should not play because their fingerprints are all over Keno licensing, operations, reporting, and the disbursement of Keno revenues. And even though that might not technically fit the definition of conflict, it doesn't appear well, and we'd be better off to have those few individuals abstain from Keno. I encourage you to make the changes accordingly. Thank you.
Any other comments from the public on this item?
Name is Gene Schultz. I live at 2306 Gene Drive, Fremont. I wasn't prepared to speak again on this, but I scribbled something down here. I seem to remember one of the founders said something about if men were angels, there would be no need for government. So I assume that maybe you all seem that you're angels, and maybe all the other city councils are angels too. So just think about that. Thank you.
Good evening, Kathy Robertson, 1896 Luther Lane, Hooper, Nebraska. As I'm sitting here listening to this, couple things go through my mind. It would appear if you want to allow everyone to play, just remove it altogether. Why? Because if it doesn't exist in ordinances, then there's no question, right? Just remove it altogether. And then you don't have to worry about, well, it says these people can, but these people aren't included, so then they can't. There's no confusion. Why does that ordinance even exist in town if the idea is that everyone can play? My other thought is, so for there to be a conflict of interest, and I can see where somebody might think that, but how would that actually happen? If you thought it out, what would someone have to do, say a council member, to influence the game or vote for somebody to receive Keno funds in a certain manner? How would that happen? Yeah, it's a game of chance. I've played it and lost, I never won. But, it's a committee that decides who they choose to receive, and council approves it, right? It would have to be something very sinister for someone to try and influence somebody getting the grant, but them playing would have absolutely nothing to do with that. In my mind, I think it's two separate things: playing versus just being good stewards in decision making and transparency and no corruption and things like that. I mean, the other thing is, what does the state say? What does the state say? And leave it at that. I mean, I think it's actually a question for legal, but just wanted to throw those observations out. Thank you.
Anybody else here to speak on this item? Okay. All right, comments from the council on this? Councilman Jensen?
I guess my only comment to this point, we're not deciding whether we can or can't play Keno. We already know that we can. It's just cleaning up the language. I mean, that was determined back in the late 90s when they changed that and made council members able to play. Personally, right now, I'd be in favor of moving this forward on first reading and looking at maybe lopping off some of the other restrictions that are on there in future readings.
Councilman Vaughn?
Yeah, I guess I was staring at this over and over again and looking at the section titles. Elected officials, participation in city authorized Keno lottery operations, restrictions. So the whole point of that section of code is who is restricted and who is not. I almost feel like in legal, maybe you could give an opinion. Why wouldn't we just strike them and not have them present at all?
Yep, Travis Jacot, city attorney, that the top paragraphs in each section is what is in statute. It's to prohibit any owner or person who has interest in a company that owns the Keno lottery. So that I do suggest we keep. But the other parts about individuals being able to play, the city of First Class is authorized by statute to place further regulations than the state does. And Councilman Sukram came up with the idea to add that last line just for clarification for the future on 2207.
Councilman Von Baron?
Yeah, and I think it's easy to get caught up in the emotion of the moment and throw in arguments that don't necessarily pertain. And one of those is it's obvious that no councilman can influence the outcome of the game. I mean, we all understand that. That's just math, and that is what it is. So that's really not relevant here. And I could have saved Councilman Sukum some time because I actually did quite a bit of that research earlier on. And I agree. It's not, I couldn't find any restrictions in the other surrounding communities. But really, with the whole point of it is, it really doesn't matter. It's what are we going to decide as a council? I just thought it was interesting that in the first response that I got, this is pretty clear and designed to prevent government influence gambling practices, we being government influencing gambling practices. The second response, 30 days later, when we found that exception back in the 90s, the bottom line of it, we were advised of legal's finding, but the bottom line of it is, although elected officials are able to play the lottery, I advise that you refrain from doing so to avoid raising conflict of interest issues. So at every point, we address the whole issue of possible conflicts of interest. And given, as I pointed out, we approved the licenses, we govern the regulations, we come back and approve the spending. We cannot be impartial. And I think we're fair game for public accusation if they take an issue with what we're doing, that we truly can't be unbiased. And I guess if you want to look at the ultimate conflict of interest, it's that we as a city approved the licenses in the first place, representing the city. So even the city itself, larger than the council, has a conflict of interest here. So that's the whole thing for me. I simply just would like to get away from the appearance of any conflict and at least try to uphold the council's image in some fashion.
Anybody else on the council that wishes to speak on this point? Councilwoman Lathrop.
Technically, if somebody's playing Keno, are they not helping support everything that we're voting to support in town, where these Keno funds are going? I mean, it's kind of a way of supporting a cause.
Councilwoman Ganem.
No, I agree with that comment and something to think about anyway. And I don't play Keno. I'd be like Kathy, I would never win anyway, so it doesn't matter. I would just throw my money away if I did that. But it does show that we're actually supporting because we can't influence that game. Now, I have a husband who would say no gambling and the spouses can't gamble either. But, I step back on that. You can't tell me what to do as a spouse. Sorry, so it's interesting. It is tough. And I can see where there would be an argument for, like, the finance director who works very directly with Keno being considered, but the council people just actually kind of approve it's gone through committee. And so our role in that is really the overall kind of arching checkpoint there.
Okay. Any other member of the council that wants to speak on this? If there are none, I'd take a motion. Councilman Jensen.
I'll make the motion to approve first reading of ordinance 5664.
Councilman Vaughn.
I will second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-1, Mayor.
Now introduce and have first reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, repealing and replacing chapter 2, article 2, sections 2-207 and chapter 2, article 5, section 2-505 of the Fremont Municipal Code and all other ordinances, parts of ordinances in conflict with this ordinance, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect on first reading.
Okay. I take a motion to adjourn. Councilman Sukram,
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Councilman Vaughn,
Oh, second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
We are adjourned.